اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. ألف لام ميم ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. Again, welcome to another spiritual solitude session brought to you by Faith Inspire. We're going to, inshallah, dive into our next chapter of In the Early Hours, written and brought to you again by Ustadh Khurrad Murad and edited by Dr. Riza Muhammad. May Allah reward them immensely for carrying out a great job of bringing together a book that really helps us to reflect, helps us to be, inshallah, better human beings, better believers who are connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those of you who have been with us on this journey for the last 4 weeks, well done to all of you, because I must say this is a blessing. This is a real blessing to be able to join every session and to come this far. Because one thing I have found, this does not reflect on the Muslims or these kind of sessions only, but whenever you have a course, it's very often it happens you have a lot of enthusiasm from a lot of people right at the outset, and then people start to kind of, after the first session, second session, it starts to decrease in numbers. And that's because, we make a lot of intentions, we make a lot of plans to join a lot of things, but we find it difficult to be consistent. And this is why it's so important that we take lesson from a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he says that ahabbul a'mali ila Allah ta'ala, the deeds beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most, adwamuha wa in qall, that it is done regularly even if it's small. So one of the things that we've got to try and do is hold on to something and to be consistent with it and go to the end. The great thing about covering a book or to go over a book is that there is a person who has put together not only their research, their understanding, but their life experiences in the form of a book from beginning to end. And so it is a journey, and every journey has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end. If you simply start the journey, but you kind of get off in the middle, you haven't completed the journey. The journey is incomplete. So this is just like any other physical journey that we make. The spiritual journey is very similar in that we have to make a beginning, make that intention, make that, if you remember the first session that we did, we talked about the prerequisites of tazkiyah, prerequisites of a spiritual solitude. And one of the key thing was consistency and an irada that is more than an intention. This is about a genuine desire to get better, genuine desire to really get in the process of self-development, of spiritual well-being, inshallah. So what is our session this week? What does Ustadh Khurrad Murad have to teach us this week? If we now go on to the chapter 5, we can see it is about spending in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As usual, I will begin with a short story, and I found this really amazing story that I found in the story of Imam Hassan al-Banna And what I found was that you 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 get a real sense of somebody who knew, who understood what spiritual solitude was. So let's dive into this. I'm calling it the story of the silent night. Please try to listen very carefully to the story and understand what I'm trying to say, inshallah. So it begins on a very silent night. Ironically, it's also on a journey of two men who are on a journey, and this was in Egypt, and this was very late into the night. And it begins with this: Omar, are you sleeping? He asked through a whispered murmur. No, I answered. The day had been long and relentless. It was already so late, I was getting ready to sleep, mindful that the day ahead wouldn't be any less arduous. 20 or 30 minutes passed by in silence. Omar, are you sleeping? No, I answered a second time. It became quiet once again. I didn't grasp the urgency in his voice, but remained silent anyway. Half an hour passed by again. Omar, are you sleeping? This time, I didn't respond at all. I pretended to sleep so as not to bother him, waiting for a reply and hearing none. He presumed that I had fallen asleep. Omar, are you sleeping? I did not respond. He arose in the still of the night, without making a sound, alone beside his companion whom he thought was in a deep slumber, and started to perform the night prayer. For God only, oblivious to my attentive gaze, hidden from anyone's sight. Now just think for a moment, this is the end of that story. This is a story narrated by somebody called Umar al-Tilmisani, an old-time student and traveling companion of Imam Hassan al-Banna, who was an imam in Egypt, who provides us with this story. Now, the attitude of his master, in this case, Imam Hassan, really was enough to move him to tears. It exemplified the personality of Imam Hassan al-Banna: light-giving faith, a deep spirituality, personal discipline, gentle and soft with his fellow human beings. Ustadh Omar al-Tilmisani wrote this story and repeated it often. And many other stories like this have been told about this Imam. But what this story teaches us is this desire of a public personality to try and find opportunities where it's purely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I thought this story really captures the main lesson that we need to take from this chapter, called spending for Allah's sake, spending for God's sake. How do we give to others only for God's sake? I just want you to again think for a few moments to think about this. Write it down. Share it if you can on the Q&A section of Zoom, or comment it on YouTube. How do we give to others only for God's sake? How can we do that? Because people are literally, if you're giving to others, they can see. What kinds of things do you think you could do to give to others, so that, just like what Imam Hassan was trying to do, is even at a moment in time where he was praying next to his companion, he was trying to maintain that closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and maintain that it is only for God's sake alone. So what can you do? One of the things that's been mentioned by a sister here is make dua. I was thinking that this is a really good one. You can make dua for people. And in fact, dua that you make for others in their absence is a dua that is accepted. Subhanallah. So this is another thing that you can give. Another thing that you can do, it's been mentioned, I think she's going to take my list away here, is giving sadaqah on their behalf. So you're giving sadaqah for another person without that person knowing. Perhaps often we do that for our parents, for those who have passed away, and so on. But that's another very important thing that you could do, where you're giving to somebody. But I want to give something a little bit even less than that, something much smaller. Could you share something positive about another person with another person? In other words, you're talking positive about another person in their absence. That's also a form of giving, only for Allah's sake, because you're not benefiting anything by giving, but you're simply sharing that information about this person, so that this is the person that benefits from this act of your compliment. And this really captures the key thing that we're trying to communicate in this session about giving only for Allah's sake. Alhamdulillah. Again, it's been, if you say something kind to make them happy for Allah's sake. Okay, so that's something that actually you're saying directly to them. So it could be something that you say directly to them, or it could be something that you say in their absence. When you say it directly to them, obviously they're hearing you, they're seeing you. So therefore, there is almost an element where you are saying that, but you might be seeking their praise in return, or you might be seeking something in their return. Whereas if you do it in their absence totally, then you are able to you're really doing it for Allah's sake alone. It's a very powerful reminder about what, even when you're giving, you can do it for Allah's sake alone. Jazakallah khair for sharing that. And this really brings back to something that is essential to understanding here, which is the love of the dunya. Ustada Yasmin Mujahid, she says something I thought really captured again what we're trying to communicate here about. The love for the dunya is what holds us back from giving. What's given to dunya is lost forever. What's given to dunya is lost forever. What's given to Allah is never lost. If you give what you love for the sake of what He loves, you'll have what you love forever. Just picture that for a moment. What's given to dunya is lost forever. What's given to Allah is never lost. If you give what you love for the sake of what He loves, you'll have what you love forever. And it really captures the key point that we want to make about this is when you are giving from yourself, actually you are loving Allah, you're loving the hereafter, you're loving that ultimate prize for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. Now think about, there are some worldly misconceptions. What will make you happy? What will really make you happy? If you think about also what is normally seen as things that will make people happy. Just think for a moment. What will make you happy? What is often seen are the ways that people will be happy. And here, you might have other things in mind, but I want to really share with you a few ideas often seen as things that often people think what will make them happy is a perfect body. So therefore they work a lot on trying to make sure that their body is looking the perfect, perhaps trying to imitate somebody, trying to make themselves look like somebody that they have seen. And so therefore whatever constitutes perfect, this is an interesting idea, the perfect body, because a perfect body in one part of the world could be seen differently in other parts. I remember listening to somebody in Egypt once that actually they saw, and I think it's partly in other parts of the world as well, whereby they saw somebody who's skinny, perhaps maybe even good built, as not having a perfect body, whereas somebody who's much bigger, and what we here would probably even term obesity, or somebody who's very big, to be very beautiful. And that was, the notion in other parts before perhaps it became so globalized, where people got only one type of picture, but in different parts of the world, the whole idea. So perfect body is one thing that people see. The second one is obviously, probably should come right at the top here, is a lot of money. Having a lot of money would make us happy. Here, one of the research talks about the idea of awesome things. And here I've given an example, because what could awesome things be? Awesome things are like having the latest car, having the latest gadgets, and even having a house, of the dream house that you want. True love is another one. Having the good job and the best grades. And here is the interesting thing. The research that's particularly have been done in the last 50 years, and you can also find very recent research into these words, particularly carried out by British psychologists and American psychologists as well. They looked into these, and what they found was that a lot of people who thought these things will make them happy, they were not a very lasting happiness. So, for example, somebody thought that when they have a good job, of course, very often means not just having a job that you feel good about, but a job that pays you more. And one of the research found that a person who was on a 30K salary, when they wanted a 50K salary, and they said at the beginning of this research, they said that 50K salary would really make them the happiest, and they wouldn't need anything more. And I think you probably could guess, when they reached the 50K salary, or when they researched into those who have 50K salary already, they said what really they wanted was a salary that is in the range of 70 to 80. And of course, when those people who have reached the 70 to 80, what they wanted and they felt what would really make them happy is about 130K. So it's really interesting that this correlates with the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, that with the Bani Adam, the son, daughter of Adam, as human beings, when you give them a sack of gold, they want a mountain full of gold. And so our needs and our wants actually increases more we have. So we're never happy with true love. We're never happy with the best grades. We're never happy with having a lot of money, because we want more than what we have. And so the researchers were saying, actually, you have to really deal with what makes you happy. And these are worldly misconceptions that really the research backs with the kind of way that we look at the dunya. So one of the things that they talk about is, when you're trying to make investment, invest in experiences, not the material. Because whilst your latest car, the novelty wears off after maybe a month or two, you have this car, the latest car that you wanted, or you've dreamt of having this car, maybe a month, two goes, it doesn't feel like the same anymore. Whereas when people had invested in experiences, they went on a holiday somewhere and they had these experiences. Actually, the research found something really interesting. When you talk to other people about the car that you bought, it doesn't bring as much happiness as if you were to speak to somebody about an experience that you had, a place that you've gone, and you talked about the beauty of that place or the experience that you had. It actually, so the experiences, getting involved in non-material things, actually doesn't only make you happy, and it lasts a lot longer. It also, when you're talking to others about it, it makes them happy. So that's really interesting. Maybe when you get a chance, write down 3 experiences you want to have. Perhaps think about 3 experiences you want to have after this whole lockdown ends. Perhaps you are thinking about, very often I'm seeing on social media, people want to go and eat in this place and so on. But that could be part of an experience. But again, it could be a material thing whereby once you've eaten, and perhaps it doesn't taste as good as you thought, and so on. Think about three things, or three. It doesn't have to be the immediate experience that you want. Maybe this whole spiritual solitude made you think about the kind of experiences that will enhance your spiritual well-being. What kinds of things can you do? I remember just one of the things that perhaps people often speak about their experience of going to Umrah or going to Hajj. And really, it could be some very basic level experience. It doesn't have to be going away very far. It could be something very close to home that you can think about. And I remember just a few months ago when I went to Tunisia, one of the things that you find when you go to Tunisia, especially the city of Tunis and so on, is their buildings, or a lot of their old houses in particular, are in blue and white. And I just recently remembered the beauty of that place as a whole. And if we were to buy something, it probably wears off, but that memory of going to that place stays on for much longer, and you can still talk about it. You can maybe even look at the old pictures from that experience that you had. So this is also applies to those of you who have children. Try to, if you have money to spend more money on experiences with them, as opposed to just keep holding on to money or to spending money on the latest gadgets or latest material things. So this is really important to our understanding of giving for Allah's sake, because this is all about an attitude in life. If you have that kind of an attitude, so it's almost as though you're training yourself not to hold on to the material, not to love the material so much, but as much as the experiences, and of course always having in mind that these kind of things also enhances your love for the hereafter. And this is the beautiful thing that we are taught by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that charity does not decrease wealth. Charity does not decrease wealth. And so whenever you're giving, whatever that you're giving, there's always a way that this money, I don't know anybody who has lost a lot of money by giving wealth, or they became poorer as a result of giving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is obviously talking about charity in terms of giving money for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, lend unto Allah a goodly loan. Whatever good you shall forward on your behalf, you shall find it with Allah as better and richer in reward. So we're probably on the eve of Ramadan, either tonight or it could be tomorrow, the eve of Ramadan. And one of the things we learn about Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he was the most generous in the month of Ramadan. He used to give a lot more. And this is, alhamdulillah, we as a Muslim community, we've taken that on board, and there is a lot more giving. But don't lose out. And don't think about the fact that, this charity is raising that money, and this charity. Maybe think about certain charities that you want to support in this month of Ramadan. And start your month of Ramadan, the eve of Ramadan, by giving something in charity. So be generous. Ustadh Khurrad Murad says, for whatever you spend on yourself is only for your temporary sustenance, while whatever you spend in the way of Allah is an investment in your future, for which will provide everlasting sustenance. Now, there is something to keep in mind here about sadaqah and zakah. Zakah is compulsory, and probably many of you are thinking about your zakah, because very often we try and give the zakah in the month of Ramadan, both for the reward, but also for really just remembering that this is the time that we have to give zakah. But zakah can be given any time during the year, but this is one good way to remember. Okay, once a year, I know in the month of Ramadan, I will give my zakah. But there's a difference between zakah and sadaqah. Zakat is compulsory. It's something every Muslim who has certain amount of money has to give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But sadaqah is not compulsory. Sadaqah is charity that you give as much as you can in different ways. So that's something to keep in mind, is what kind of sadaqah, charity you will give. Again, the Prophet ﷺ said, do not wish to be like anyone except in two cases. The first is a person whom Allah has given wealth and he spends it righteously. The second is the one whom Allah has given wisdom, perhaps the Quran, and he acts according to it and teaches it to others. Here the Prophet ﷺ is teaching something very unique, which is that you can almost envy somebody. Do not wish to be like, because sometimes envy is a bad thing to have, but you can envy the person who has wealth and he spends it righteously, and somebody who's teaching Quran and learns the Quran and he acts according to it and teaches it to others. That's a kind of a form of envy that in other words, you can aspire to be like that person. So the other aspect is that how do you spend on other human beings? Spending on those in need is so commendable form of worship. It's a form of ibadah, subhanallah. You know, it's not just that spiritual solitude is not just about being at prayer, but it's also about thinking of others, thinking of your fellow human beings. And this is the beauty of the Islamic spirituality. Islamic spirituality is constantly trying to improve yourself, of your connection to Allah, but your connectedness to others around you. And so never forget, one of the spiritual masters said once that whilst a Sufi, perhaps who's so much into spiritual solitude, wants to reach Allah and stay there, the Prophet, he was in the Laylatul Mi'raj, he was taken there and he returned to his community, he returned to his people. This is the prophetic spiritual solitude. You have moments to yourself, but also thinking of others. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he says, a generous person is close to Allah, is close to paradise, close to people, and far from Jahannam. However, a miserly person is far from Allah, far from paradise, far from people, but close to Jahannam. Allah loves more an ignorant person who is generous than a worshipper who is miserly. In other words, somebody who is trying to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and claiming to be an ibad of Allah, claiming to be of abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, she cannot claim to be that unless this is a person who gives. So we should not, of course, expect any favors from those who we give to sadaqah. And this is, I want to remind especially those of us who are often, especially nowadays, taking selfies with those who are giving and so on. Again, if you go back to Imam Hassan and what he was trying to teach, and the theme of this whole spiritual solitude is wherever possible, we try and give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I asked you, well, how can you give to others only for Allah's sake? And just being very, very careful about taking that picture. Of course, there's an issue that has arisen recently where people are being exploited, maybe people aren't being communicated, and I do hope the charity organizations review their conduct in the way they deal with that. These selfies, I think they should have a selfie policy of some sort. But I think from an individual spiritual point of view, just keeping intact with this message that, am I really giving this for Allah? Am I really giving this as an act of charity, or is this something from which I want to benefit? Perhaps often we would like people to say nice things about us and like our Facebook page or whatever it is. We just have to be very, very careful that we don't expect anything from them. Neither should we expect that they will be grateful, even if they don't thank us and kind to us and give something to us in return. Nor should we be motivated by a desire for any other worldly reward. This is the spiritual message behind sadaqah, of giving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Concerning our attitude to giving, Allah reminds us, O you who believe, make not your charity worthless by reminders of your generosity and by causing vexation. Our sadaqah should be qard hasana, a loan given for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without expecting profit. Very, very powerful message about giving. and this will ensure our people aren't exploited either. So the reward is sought from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rather than mortals. If we go back to this, is about love of the dunya and what we want, and whose gratitude and return can be greater to us than Allah's, given out of love and mercy for us. So instead of hoping for some worldly benefit from our sadaqah, we should be grateful for those who accept our sadaqah, for they have given us an opportunity to invest our wealth in a business venture. It's like a business venture. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lend us to a goodly loan with Allah, who has promised a return in reward 700 times greater. So there are two blessings which many people lose. They are health and free time for doing good. And this brings us to the next bit about giving, which is really that if we don't spend the time to give now, our health and free time may not be there. So just being very, very aware of this, that sometimes we think that what about if I don't have money? What about I'm giving as much as possible by my wealth? The prophetic practice of solitude taught us that smiling to a person with a cheerful face, don't be those mood hoovers who suck out the mood, the good mood out of people and plant them with pessimism and bad kind of pessimism and things that are going bad, and constantly talking about, oh, this isn't working out, that isn't, but the glass is half full kind of person. So just being aware of that there are these, they're not the same in charity in terms of giving your mal, giving your wealth is definitely considered more. But on top of that, you can also give other ways. So we should never consider any charity too small or not worth doing or giving. And one practice that one of the sheikh once mentioned, he knew of somebody who in this masjid, even if any person came to any charity organization he gave something, even if it's a pound, if it's even if you can't even give a pound, 50p you have, whatever you have, give something whenever you can. But apart from that, giving money, giving wealth, there are other opportunities, there are other ways. And one of them, the Prophet ﷺ said, is a smile is a charity, a good word, giving maybe a compliment to somebody is a charity. And subhanAllah, do not belittle even the smallest act of kindness, the Prophet says. Even if it were no more than meeting your brother or your sister with a smiling and cheerful face. This is mentioned in Muslim. So a good, smiling, cheerful face, encouraging people. What about those who are involved in charity, those who are involved in acts of giving? Encouraging them itself could be a form of charity for you. Spending on family, spending on those around you. SubhanAllah, this is the only religion perhaps that considers such acts to be a form of charity. So there are plenty of opportunities for us to give for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a special kind of charity. But another kind of special type of charity is, Ustadh Khurrad Murad says, is that he says that sadaqah also has no value without love and sympathy. The Quran states, kind words and the covering of faults are better than charity followed by injury. So spending in the way of Allah is closely related to controlling anger and forgiving people. And they all come from a big heart. The Prophet ﷺ says, two of the qualities which Allah loves are gentleness and endurance. When your heart becomes big enough to forgive the faults of others, Allah has promised for you the reward of Jannah. The wronged one who endures with fortitude and forgiveness indeed achieves a matter of high resolve. So this is the amazing thing again, forgiveness. And this is again coming closer to the essential message of Islam, that yes, it may seem like a mundane act of just giving some money to a person or a charity or a group, but actually it's about our outlook. And this is the key message that we want to really get, which is that this act of charity, don't just think of it as reaching out into your pocket or your purse or your bank account and just giving. This is about the general outlook that we have towards life. And this is why I started off with love of dunya. And this is about our attitude towards our life and our spiritual being that helps. That is why zakah is a form of purification. Zakah is a form of purifying our wealth and ourselves. Just a reminder again, as we reach Ramadan, inshallah, a constant dua that you make, Allahumma innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. Allahumma innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. Oh Allah, you are forgiving, you love to forgive, so forgive me. Allahumma innaka afuwun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu anni. So if you haven't learned this, you can look at this, save this and look at it on your mobile if you like. But it's a short dua that we are able to memorize. So here I want to kind of end with, just think about writing down 3 goals that you have for Ramadan. Try to think about what you would take from spiritual solitude so they become lasting habits. Okay, so don't think about something unique, something original, something that, you know, it doesn't connect with everything that we've been talking about. It is everything that we've been talking about so far. And think about what you need for yourself. What are the 3 goals that you want to achieve? I know a lot of people like to have a lot more on their list, but I've always found that with the Ramadan, it itself comes with its own goals. There is Taraweeh prayers, there is the Hajjat prayers, there's already fasting that you already do. But think about 3 things that you want to do in this month, which can then be continued in light of the hadith that consistent effort and action is better than big actions that is only done once in a while. So just think about that while you think about Ramadan. The week 5 exercises for this week, inshallah. Plan your giving this Ramadan. Think about the kind of things that we've been talking about, giving charity in terms of money, maybe giving or spending on family, spending, giving in other ways. Give charity in some way every day. Doesn't have to be money, as we mentioned, but it could be any form of charity. But give, and do one random act of giving a day if you can. So these are 3 exercises that you can do in the coming month, in the coming week, inshallah ta'ala. And don't forget, hope, share it with others. It's one thing we can all hold on to, inshallah. Please try and keep up with, if you haven't missed any session, try to watch the previous session, because any journey starts from one, moves from the one to the other. If somebody was to just join today, you'll get some understanding, there's no doubt about it, but try to keep so that you can see the whole jigsaw that we're building, inshallah. Keep safe and keep having a positive attitude, inshallah. May Allah help you, may Allah love you, and Allahumma ballighna Ramadan. May Allah give us tawfiq to reach Ramadan and to gain and reap the fruits of Ramadan, which is taqwa. Because everything else, our health is important, our well-being is important, our connection with our families and our community is important. But ultimately, all of these things together should be supporting and helping us to gain in taqwa. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. This is the main objective of month of Ramadan, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.